When someone says keep your head on a swivel, do you know what it means and how to do it effectively? On this podcast, SEAL Team 6 warrior Don Mann and Survival Dispatch CEO Chris Heaven drop a bunch of tips on how to improve your situational awareness and avoid walking into danger or being ganged up on like the guy in this video clip. And we're back with SEAL Team 6 warrior Don Mann. Thanks for coming back, Don.
Oh, how you doing, Chris? It's good to be back with you.
Always super thankful when you can carve off some time for us. So let's jump right in. The topic at hand today is situational awareness. Take it away.
You know, Chris, we all know situational awareness is something we're all taught in the military. We talk about it. It's life-saving. It can save anybody's life, and it does save lives when you have it. When you don't have it, a lot of lives are lost. It's something you hear about all the time, but you don't hear too often how to practice situational awareness or how to practice the steps. And I knew I was coming on your show. Of course, I'm always happy to be here with you. I bring it back to what happened 25 days ago in Israel, where people don't always have situational awareness. For instance, if you're at a concert and you're celebrating peace, even though you're next door to Gaza, if you're at this concert and you're happy and you're dancing, do those people have situational awareness? Did Israel have situational awareness when they were attacked? I mean, those are questions that are worth asking, but situational awareness has to be practiced. We know what happened 25 days ago with the Hamas attack in Israel, and we know what can happen if you let your guard down a little bit. We also know Hamas and Hezbollah have big organizations down in Mexico, and they've come through our border numerous times and the cells all over our country. To walk around without situational awareness can be deadly. And I'm not trying to sound like a fanatic or anything. So we do have to practice it. And we have to teach our families to practice it. And we don't want them to think that we're some, far crazed lunatic thinking we're going to be attacked at any moment. Right. But we do want them to be aware that there is a threat. The wolf is out there. Colonel David Grossman, he likes to say there's a sheep, the sheepdogs, and the wolves. Most people are sheep. All those sheep want is to take care of their families, work, come home, and take care of the families. But the wolf is out there. The wolf might be the criminal, might be the guy at the gas station who's holding up people. It could be the terrorist. It could be anybody. It's the bad guy. There's the sheep and the wolf. And then there's people like you and I and people in your community and my community, our community, who are the sheepdog, who have to protect these sheep. The sheepdogs can look like a sheep, but they're the ones who have the capacity to bring violence upon the wolf, to subdue and eliminate and neutralize the wolf. The sheepdog is always aware, but the sheep have to become aware because the world is more dangerous now than it was a year ago. And it keeps getting more and more dangerous. My daughter for years thought I was always, hey, when I tell her to keep her back at a restaurant wall, she always says, Dad, we're not going to be attacked. I said, no, most likely we won't. But if we are, we have a plan. I learned the OODA loop and I learned the Alice and I learned all these different acronyms. But what I always go back to, and I'm older, but Colonel Jeff Cooper, who ran Gunsight for many, many years, he taught me situational awareness way back in the 80s. And it's always stuck with me. He said, you have to be able to have the ability to perceive the situation and understand it and respond to the situation. So he broke it down into colors. And this is the simplest way I know to understand it and the simplest way I know to explain it to other people. He had condition white, condition yellow, condition orange, condition red, and condition black. And you mention it all the time, and I love the way you say it, but condition white, so many people are on condition white because they're like this. They're seeing the world through a phone or a computer, and they're not paying attention, or they have their headphones in, and they really don't have any situational awareness. Mm-hmm. Now, they are aware of what they're listening to. They are aware of what's going on the phone, but they're not aware of the other 359 plus degrees that could be a threat.
Weapons of mass distraction.
I love the way you say that. So condition white that's the most dangerous way to live. And I do go to condition white when I'm home, but I can't even tell you honestly that I'm in pure condition white because I know where my weapons are. I know where my exits are. I see a car coming anywhere near me, I go right to yellow. Plus, I'm relaxed still, but condition white's total unawareness. And see more and more people in total unawareness. I'm seeing people driving, putting on makeup, women putting on makeup as they're driving.
Crazy.
On a text, they have no idea that a car can come out in front of them, a deer can come out. You have to be aware of what's going on, because if and when that threat does hit this person, they will be totally unprepared to handle it, and they'll freeze. No one really should be comfortable in condition white in these times. We shouldn't be conditioned white and be comfortable in that unless you're home. For instance, I like to use the example, if you're driving down the road and all of a sudden you see a car following you. Okay, there's a car following me, no big deal. I'm looking left mirror, I'm looking up at the mirror, center mirror, right mirror. I'm going to take a right here. I'm just going to go out of my way and go home a little different route. Hey, that car's following me. He's taking the right where I took the right. Okay, now my condition's heightening up a bit. There's white and yellow. I'm definitely in yellow now. And now I'm perceiving a threat. Yellow's a relaxed alertness, but I see something that could be a threat. I'm mindful of my surroundings. I haven't let go of my guard. I'm watching everything around me. I'm listening for sounds, sights, and anything that might get my attention. My head's up. I'm looking around, and now I notice there's somebody traveling closely behind me. And I'm not letting on that I know this, but I look, yep, two guys in that car. I'm going to condition orange now. Let me stop at this light, and right before it goes red, I'm going to go, wow, they did the same thing. They are following me. And condition orange, you go to condition orange, and now there's some specific threat that triggered your full attention, which could be dangerous because now you're not paying attention to anything else. All your focus is on that potential threat behind you, but you have to deal with that threat. And it's a fight or flight or freeze. You don't want to freeze. Okay, so I'm being followed now. I'm being followed. I always travel with a weapon myself. I'm being followed. I'd like to de-escalate any situation if a situation is escalating. So what I'm going to do, I know there's a hospital up here. I know there's a police station up here. I know there's a mall over here. I'm going to pull over there. There's a lot of people and there are cameras at the police stations and the hospitals, and let's be on camera here. And to de-escalate that way, not to pull in your driveway or let these people come in, because condition red, you have to be ready to defend yourself.
Do you want premium ad-free content? Duh. Content that's not censored by big tech, of course. Well, with SD Insider, you can get behind the scenes and a whole lot more. Link in the description.
If you can prevent the fight, all the better. If you can de-escalate and drag that person to a place where there's cameras or police or a mall where there's a lot of people, but try to de-escalate the situation as best you can. Because once you're in condition red, you're not surprised by the threat. You've worked your situational awareness up one level at a time. And spending time in Iraq and Afghanistan and Yemen and Somalia and all these countries, you can't always be in condition red because it physically exhausts you. It wears you out. So you have to be able to heighten up to red if you need it and back down. A lot of people don't talk about condition black. Colonel Jeff Cooper didn't teach condition black. That came a bit afterwards. Condition black usually comes from if you're in the white and then boom, a threat comes, you totally were unaware, you go to condition black and you freeze, you don't know what to do, and you're a sitting target for that threat. So condition white's deadly, condition black's deadly, and condition yellow and orange, you get more out of life, I think, when you have heightened sense of alertness. Yeah, look at that, look at those trees over there. That's really nice over there. Look at the mountains over there. You're paying more attention to your surroundings, not just looking for the threat. But like you were talking about with the concerts and the music festivals, if there is a commotion and you hear some noise and there's a bunch of commotion over there. Something could be going on. So now I'm shifting my condition. I'm heightening my alertness. And I see the emergency exit over there. I see an exit over here. That's where I'm going to head toward if something gets worse. I know there's a crowd of people over there. I know there's a crowd of people all in this arena or the stadium. So maybe I'll stay near the door anyway. For that lesson, Colonel Jeff Cooper always taught. It stayed with me. And I've been able to pass that message along for decades. For me, it's the easiest way to heighten your sense of alertness, to have a specific alertness to a threat, but to know if you're specifically alerted to a threat, that could distract you from other threats too. We use that in war all the time. Okay, yeah, we have forces coming in the north side of the island. Okay, get all the enemy troops up that way to block the force, and then you invade on this side of it. It works, but it could work to our disadvantage too.
That's interesting, Don. I've never heard somebody state it quite like that, that when you're in a higher level of awareness, that you could potentially lose track of something outside, something in your periphery.
When people are attacked or they see a perceived threat or they get away from the threat, their common responses are, if they didn't go up these levels of security, is I never saw it coming. I had no idea where it came from. I had no clue that person was right there. And those are the phrases people use when they're attacked or when a threat is around them. It's just like the same with the accidental shooting with a gun. I had no idea it was loaded. It's always the same words that come out of these people.
My wife watches a show, I think it's called I Survived. And typically there's 3 people per episode who've been through some horrendous experience, like being kidnapped and assaulted or something to that effect. Every single person on that show at the beginning of them telling their story says the same thing. Something didn't feel right, but they ignored it and ended up paying a heavy price. Tony Blauer discusses this frequently. Trust your intuition. If something doesn't feel right, doesn't seem right, then it's probably not right, and don't ignore it. Take action on that. For concerts in particular, you see a group of people who are drinking, they're loud, they're obnoxious. You can see people around them are happy with the behavior. There's a potential for conflict. It's like Dr. Jen always says, distance equals safety. So put some distance between you and them, which is good advice. I think one of the things to put a fine point on it that comes out of your lessons here is to be constantly scanning the area that you're in when you're not home. If you're in public, constantly scan, see what's going on. Don't be afraid to profile people. At the end of the day, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. Something else that we do, and I told you the background to it, and I won't bore our audience with it, but there's a few websites, crimegrade.org, neighborhoodscout.com, ADT Crime Maps. So if we're traveling somewhere, I punch in the zip codes and I have a look at all 3 of those websites. I want to see what the violent crime looks like. It's pretty good barometer to tell you, yeah, don't stop in this zip code. Don't stop in this area of this zip code. The ironic part of this is that a few years ago, Redfin and Zillow, they removed the crime statistics from their property listings because it was not politically correct. It was maybe shining a light on people in an unfavorable manner, but facts are facts. Using those websites has been beneficial for us. So it's just a little tidbit that our audience could work with. Tell me what goes through your mind, Don, when you walk into a place, a business venue. What goes through your mind when you first enter somewhere where you may or may not have been previously?
I'm actually, I'm interested in things, not because I'm waiting to be attacked, but I just like to look around and get a good feel for my surroundings. Just instinctually, I like to do that. I'll walk into a place I've never been before, and I notice things and I see things. If with a friend or my girlfriend or whatever, I'll pick out things. She goes, oh, it's amazing you notice that. I am very interested in my surroundings, not only because there could be a threat, but I do know this, Chris. If you go into a large arena or stadium or a place where there's a lot of people, I'll go back to the wolf analogy. There is a wolf there. And I know there is a wolf somewhere, someone who wants to take advantage of you. I mean, you're a big, strong guy. And like you've mentioned, people probably wouldn't pick on you unless they want to test their toughness.
I'm Jason Sawyer with Survival Dispatch. As a Survival Dispatch insider, you'll be able to gain the knowledge, the skills, and equipment necessary to protect your family when it really, really matters. They'll provide crucial information on such things as stockpiling food, medical necessities, communication plans. You will receive specific actionable plans. Visit survivaldispatch.com to get started.
I've known a lot of people who've been attacked or robbed because maybe they weren't only in condition white, but they didn't perceive to be a person who was aware of what's going on. They didn't seem on the ball. They look like this guy's easy. It's an easy pushover. One of the biggest enemies of having situational awareness is denial. If you There's nobody out there who's going to attack me. There's no threat. You guys are all crazy. I mean, just because that person looks like a hoodlum, it doesn't mean he's going to rob you. And just because those people look like they're in a gang, they're just a group of kids. You deny the fact that those people look like people who often attack people. I don't care what political correctness is. You mentioned, if you have a gut feeling, that gut feeling is based not just it doesn't come out of nothing. A gut feeling is based on all your experiences, all you've learned, all your life, and all of that comes into your gut. So when you get that gut feeling, it's based on a lot of input you've perceived throughout your life. And you have to practice understanding and paying attention to that gut. To answer your question, I pay attention to what's going on. And I like it because I like watching people. They call it people watching. You do watch hands. If I had someone come up to me and his hands in his pocket, and he looks like he's coming directly up to me or up to somebody else, automatically will think this person may have a gun. I just think like that. It doesn't distract me from having fun or having a good time. I observe the surrounding and I practice situational awareness all the time, just instinctually, not because I'm afraid of being attacked.
An interesting part of what you're describing is not only are you observing, but you're positioning yourself so you can observe the entire area as best as possible. We've discussed this offline, which is the only reason I mention it. Sal from USA Carry has some good advice as well. With you, we've done episodes on being gas station ready. One of Sal's things is that when you walk into a gas station, identify where the cash register is right away, because if there's going to be a robbery, that's where the action's going to be. And I like that. And then the rest of his steps are similar to what you've already verbalized. Know where your exits are, scan who's in the store, and make a note of any unusual behavior. On that topic, most law enforcement agencies at the academy level teach recruits to watch people's hands. For whatever reason, I don't know the psychology behind it, but they say that people who have bad intentions and are carrying a weapon fidget with their hands. They'll touch the weapon. They're constantly moving their hands, and it's one of the tells that you can pick up on. I know myself, when we're in public, one of the first things that I do is I look for bulges in people's clothing. I want to have an idea of who's carrying a gun and who's potentially not carrying a gun. And then I also profile them. If I see a guy who's got a shirt on with American flag on it in this day and age, that's probably one of my people. Whereas if they have some Antifa bullshit or something like that, I spot that those aren't my people. So I know if the shit hits the fan, that guy's a threat. You've talked in the past, like assessing the atmosphere, the general mood of a place. Can you expand on that a little bit, Don? Because that's kind of an intangible thing that I'm not even sure how you teach people to do that. And even people who are good at it, I don't know if it's consistent or not. So let's go there next.
We were talking a little bit about what happened in Israel 25 days ago. I have a feeling that mood, that concert, even though these people have grown up surrounded by enemy their entire lives, I have a feeling the mood of that concert was just peace and happiness and just let it go and dance and have fun. 6 o'clock in the morning. But still, I think their guard was all down. Security was down. Everything was down. The mood there did not help when the situation and the threat occurred. It absolutely did not help. I think if you, probably most of your listeners, me, people like us, I think if we were there, we would realize that, yeah, the music's nice, all the fun, dancing, all that's nice, but there's a potential threat. When I was in Central America during the drug wars, I would go into cities and sometimes you can feel the mood. It's thick with anger and hatred. And it just looked like the place was going to explode. And it often did. And you can feel that, and not just a trained military person or something, but you can feel it because every look in everybody's eyes is like, I felt this in Yemen. I felt it in Iraq. I felt it in Somalia. They look at you like they hate you and they want to kill you. That's the feeling I would get when the mood is really, really bad. And then this is not a good place to be. So I've seen the moods look nice and lively and dancing and all that, like at the concert. And then like in Yemen, Somalia, Iraq, or Afghanistan, when you go into those cities where they just hate you. But I think what's important, no matter where that mood might be, the wolf is nearby. And we have to be ready for that wolf to attack the sheep. And us as sheepdog, we have to go against that wolf.
Interesting analogies there, Don. In our offline conversation, when you touched on this, it reminded me of going to a Chuck E. Cheese years ago for a youngin's birthday party. And there was a group of people there celebrating, their kid's birthday. And it was a large group, probably 12, 15 people. And they were extremely loud, extremely obnoxious. They were ignorant to the staff. The kids didn't have a lick of manners. They were pushing other kids out of the way. And I noticed that a number of other patrons in the area either moved or completely left the facility because of this group of people. And we did the same thing. Eventually it got to the point where my assessment was these people are going to piss somebody off to the point that this is going to turn into an altercation of some sort, and I don't want to be part of it. I'm just trying to provide an example of when you say Yemen, Somalia, and stuff like that. Clearly, those people hate us. They hate our way of life. They hate America. But even on the domestic front, there are going to be people who hate you for the color of your skin, whether you're white, black, or something else. And you have to be able to recognize that sort of stuff. Don't put yourself in harm's way. Really good piece of advice. You touched on something else, Don, that I think is important. And I just want to circle back to it, and that's your posture. So not only do you need to pay attention to other people's posture, you can tell some people, maybe they're drinking, doing drugs or whatever, and they've got, I call it the ILS syndrome, the imaginary lat syndrome, where their arms are like this and they're strutting around. That's a potential candidate for somebody who's going to cause a confrontation. But on the flip side, as you mentioned, I've always been a 125 pounds soaking wet freshman year, sophomore year, 210 pounds, captain of the football team. And ever since then, when I've worked security, there's potentially some drunk asshole who wants to fight me because I'm a big guy and strong. But on the flip side, that posture of confidence and awareness will deter most people from messing with you, because most criminals want the easy target. It's not really situational awareness per se, but I guess it's tied to it, because if you perceive that there's a potential threat in an area, adjusting your posture to say, look, I'm confident and I'm aware, and if you pull some shit, you're going to regret it. I want to touch on something else you mentioned as well. So you said that you go out with your family, your girlfriend, whatever the case may be, and you're assessing the situation as part of your situational awareness, where the exits are, who's in the facility, is anybody acting strange, what areas provide potential cover, concealment, all those sort of things. And that you're not crazy, you're not ultra paranoid, but people in your group may perceive you to be such. And I just want to touch on that. You have to be vigilant regardless of what people think of you and your party. If they think that you're being over the top, they won't think that if and when the shit really hits the fan. But it's not like you or I or other people live in this constant state of fear at all. We just have a higher level of awareness because we've been through some shit. We've been in bar fights. You've been in wars, theaters of war. And the message at the end of the day is, just to expand on what you're saying, be vigilant. Doesn't matter what those people think.
For instance, a woman walking around, to your point, and a purse just hanging over her shoulder, she's a target. Who can't come up with a razor blade, cut that purse off it, or pull it off her arm? It's a target. Somebody walking around totally unaware of his surroundings, it's easy to pick that out. And that's a good exercise to practice situational awareness. Pretend you are the bad guy, pretend you're the wolf, and look around at people. Who would be the easiest one to attack? You can look at it that way. Chris, I'd like to tell you something. I was in a situation once, and the person ended up being killed. I was sitting there at a table with a couple friends, couple SEAL friends, and a couple ladies. And it was a crowded place. And I noticed there was a lot of commotion to my front, to my right, like my 2 o'clock. And I noticed that there was a lot of commotion there, and some guy came bursting through this place. He had a black leather jacket on. He had slick black hair. He's a big guy. And he came rushing right toward the table I was sitting at. I was with a couple of SEALs, some women there. And the woman who was right next to me on my right, we're having a couple of drinks, dancing and things like that. She saw this guy and she put a purse around her shoulder. And he came up and he said, "You're coming with me." And all his neck veins were out and his eyes were bulged out. He looked like he was on some sort of drug. And the girl got really, really upset. She put a purse around her shoulder and he pulled it off of her shoulder and broke the strap. So now the whole place is looking around like, who is this guy? I said, leave the girl alone. And he came down, he put his finger right like this. He goes, you shut the F up, or I'll kill you. Basically, when he pulled the purse off of that woman's shoulder, she fell back and hit her head on the ground. And he walked out really fast, probably trying to avoid the police, with the lady's purse. So I thought I'd go get her purse from him. I was aware of the threat coming in. I was totally aware of the threat. He came up to our table with a crowded area, and now the threat is in my face. So I went from yellow to orange to red pretty quickly. I did not de-escalate the situation. I went after the threat because I was trying to help this woman. The bottom line is he really wanted to take my life. And I was saying, give me that purse back. The cops are coming. He reached in her purse, got a set of keys, and he was in the parking lot and he took the roof off of a T-top off of a car. And it was a T-top of a Corvette, and he held it over my head like he wanted to kill me. I could have de-escalated. I could have just walked away, but there was a sense of me being the sheepdog that I wanted to help this woman. So I picked up a large rock. So now we're walking in this parking lot. He's got a T-top over my head. I have a large rock over my head. He swung at me and missed. I swung the rock and I hit. And I won and he lost. So that day, it was sitting there, relaxed, peaceful atmosphere. Everything's nice. Everybody's happy. But I was alert to where the doors were. I alerted the threat immediately because there was a lot of commotion there. And then the potential threat. And then that potential threat became a real threat right here next to the person I was sitting with. He yanked off the purse off of her shoulder, ripped the strap off her, and then he started going out. There's people who said I should have de-escalated and just let him go, but the sheepdog came out and I wanted to go get that for her. Bottom line is he lost, I won. And if I was just drinking, not paying attention to the doors, I would have no idea that this guy was coming in. I think I helped her. The story was he was a drug dealer who had just gotten out of prison for murder, and he had killed a woman in that town, and he had beaten up a woman so badly she had had reconstructive surgery. And he was a killer. That was just a story I just thought of because I was thinking of the crowd and relaxed atmosphere, and boom, there's commotion over there. I didn't see what it was, but there was a commotion of people. Now you go right from yellow to orange to red. If I was totally unalert, in condition white, and he had come up, I would have been in condition black. And instead, I was able to eliminate the threat.
You just tweaked me on something, Don, not necessarily 100% related to that event, but somewhat related, or is, I should say, when you're assessing an area. How many times have you seen somebody who's drunk, inebriated, or mentally twisted up that has those Charlie Manson eyes where they look straight through you? What you don't want to do is stare at somebody like that, because that's what they will key in on. When you're trying to maintain this high level of situational awareness, you've got to do it in a kind of surreptitious manner. You don't want the potential bad guys to catch you staring at them, because that, in many cases, will escalate things. I'll tell you a quick story of my own, which was absolutely crazy. I knew this guy, Jeff Smith was his name. He played tackle for the Atlanta Falcons. Big guy, like 6 foot, 350 pounds, had the fastest hands I have ever seen, regardless of, for a guy that big to have hands as fast was incredible. And he was working for a friend of mine's father who owned this rock and roll bar. It was a Tuesday night. For whatever reason, Tuesday nights, there's a lot of fights in bars. I guess people who don't have anything better to do. Long story short, Jeff noticed this particular individual was acting kind of strange, and the guy turned around and caught Jeff staring at him, and he said a bunch of racial stuff, F you, blah blah blah, the whole 9 yards. Meanwhile, myself and another guy named Dale, we were kind of at arm's length, but we were watching this whole thing unfold, and in the blink of an eye, he pulled a Rambo knife out of his cowboy boot, and he wasn't a big guy. He was like maybe 5'8", 175 pounds. And he went after Jeff, and Dale and I got involved at that point in time. And we took him outside and we dealt with it. And the cops came and picked him up. This is where the story gets really crazy. They threw him in the clink for the night for being drunk in public. There were no charges laid. They let him out early in the morning, and he went back to this bar that my buddy's father owned. And there was this large set of steel doors where the bands loaded their equipment. He piled up a bunch of wood in front of that door and tried to burn the building down by burning a metal door, like just not right. And this guy truly had those Charlie Manson eyes. Of course, the bar wasn't open at that time of day, but somebody saw this happening, called the cops. The cops show up, arrest him again. And at the same time, they get a call from the sheriff in the next county over that this guy murdered his wife the night before with the knife that he pulled on us. I don't know if it's directly relevant to our conversation, besides the fact that people who are unbalanced like that, they're looking for a fight. So if somebody's staring at them, they'll go after that person. I've seen it happen time and time again. Hopefully our followers are learning some tangible stuff on how to improve their situational awareness. But when you improve your situational awareness, you got to be kind of quiet about it as well. Don't let everybody know that you're the sheepdog, in your words. Otherwise, that now makes you a target.
That's right. And when you see those people with how you described the Charlie Manson eyes, there is something wrong with them. But if they see you looking at them, they know you could be on to them, which puts you at a big disadvantage. I like what you just said. Don't let them know you're on to them. You know, Chris, also right now, I've been, of course, like we all have, glued to what's going on in the Middle East. We have another threat now. Who would ever think? Now we have the pro-Palestinians in these countries who are doing everything they can to protest and have all this violence now for people who are pro-Israel. Israel is not anti-Palestinian, they're anti-Hamas. Dawned on me, Chris, I'm in my 60s. I always wondered, how did we allow the Holocaust to happen? How did the world let that happen? Now I understand. I can't believe this hatred that's going on and what people are willing to do against one population of this world, the Jewish people, and the violence they're willing to put forth to other people just because they're Jewish. That's a whole other threat we're facing now, this pro-Palestinian threat. And all over the universities, United Nations, everybody's, all these people pro-Palestinian, that's really invoked a lot of violence around the world. And that's another threat we have now.
I have some very strong opinions on this subject, and shameless plug, I'm more than willing to share my opinions with Survival Dispatch Insider members, protected area of our website. Not so willing to share them in a public venue, just because get us suppressed or kicked off of YouTube. I will say this much though, there was a company many years ago, they still exist, but they're under different ownership, called Lava Life. They were the pioneers in online dating. One of our guys at Sun Microsystems sold them $100 million in equipment. And I just so happened to be in the area where this project was and had dinner with the guy from Sun, the salesman, and the customer. And Paul asked them, he said, how did y'all get so good at what you do? And they said, well, we weren't always really good at what we did. We started with this questionnaire. And from that questionnaire, we developed a profile of who you were and who you were looking for. And we matched you with who you were looking for, and we failed miserably. So the next guy said, Chris, here's the deal, is that we don't necessarily attract what we want, we attract what we are. And as similarities increase between parties, gravitational force increases. And he said, this applies across the board. This could be business to business, business to consumer, friends, husband, wife, whatever the case may be. I will say this much, that I don't care what people's beliefs are. I know what my beliefs are, and I know the history of our country. This country was founded on Christian values and beliefs. Whether or not somebody's Christian doesn't matter. Those beliefs are consistent. I've done a lot of work in this area that I won't bore people with. When you poll people who claim to be agnostic or atheists, typically their value system is virtually identical to a Christian value system. It's just verbalized in different ways, but it comes out when you ask the right types of questions in surveys. Problem that I see that speaks to your point is that we have brought a lot of people into this country who do not share our values and beliefs, and it's caused a further chasm between different groups in the country, stuff that resorts to violence. Our open southern borders exacerbating this problem. There's all kinds of people in this country that should not be in this country. And I don't want to betray our sources, but I can tell you that people who have either been part of the JTTF or are still plugged into the JTTF have off the record told me of some pretty crazy plots that they've uncovered. Groups of Hezbollah, for example, planning to simultaneously attack a dozen schools at the same time in a small jurisdiction, knowing full well that there's not enough law enforcement to respond to it, and then going to another town the next day and doing the same thing. And they might give up one of their cells because that's the one that law enforcement did respond to. But I was told just a couple of days ago that there was a simulation done based on that type of threat and similar threats to it. And basically, after 3 days of those types of attacks, the JTTF would predict there'd be complete breakdown of the rule of law in our society. And that's based on things like just in time, right? Average grocery store has 3 days worth of food on the shelf. There's no warehouse in the back that's full of stuff like it was when we were younger. If you were to have these simultaneous attacks, whether they be in one jurisdiction or across the entire country, in very short order, food's not available, people are shooting each other, they either perceive the person to be a threat or they want their food. This is some really scary stuff that is highly likely to unfold. I think when we discussed Israel previously, you mentioned something to the effect that the Israelis were kind of lulled into some sense of I don't know, comfort, whatever the case may be. I'm trying to remember the exact words you used, but they were basically reducing restrictions on the Palestinians, allowing them to come into Israel to work. They let their guard down essentially. And then bam, this thing hit. And our guard is so down. We see disgusting comments on our videos where people say things like, we'll never be attacked by terrorists in America. It's never going to happen. Really? What happened September 11th, 2001? And 10 years before that, they tried to attack the World Trade Centers. We have this group of people in our society, Don. I don't know how to describe it other than the fact that they are completely detached from reality. They're so married to their ideology that they're detached from reality. And they sympathize with these bad guys. I don't give a shit what somebody's sexual preference is. But these people in the alphabet community who are saying free Palestine and down with the Jews and down with Israel, I don't understand how they can't realize that if they went over there and did that, what would happen to those people, Don?
I try to understand what's going on in this world. I don't understand that thinking. All I can understand is maybe they decide to understand a little bit of the situation, not the full situation, a little bit, and want to side, like what the cops are forced to do, what the judicial system's doing. We're not going to back the cops. We're going to back the criminal. We're not going to back Israel. We're going to protect Hamas, and we're going to side with Hamas, the aggressor. It's like society is going against the good and protecting or siding with the aggressor or the criminal. And in this case, you could take out all the 4,000 years of Jewish persecution, take all that out. Basically, if you just look at what happened 25 days ago with Israel here, Hamas here, and Hamas now, there's reports they're cutting off breasts off of women, gouging out eyes, tying women and children together, burning them both alive. How can somebody side with a group like that? Take away everything else. That threat has to be neutralized. That's a threat that has to be taken off this planet, or that threat's going to keep reappearing. And Americans have to understand that's Hamas. Hamas is in Mexico, and we have an open border. Hamas is coming into the United States.
Hezbollah as well in Mexico.
And Hezbollah, both large organizations. Yeah. Hezbollah, much more funded too. Mm-hmm. Iran, who we've been given billions of dollars to year after year after year, they're funding these two organizations. And Iran has a charter, death to Israel, then death to US. Mm-hmm. US is big Satan, Israel is little Satan. We're going to destroy them both. By the way, and US, thanks for the funding, because we're going to use some of that funding to help destroy you. For Americans not to get that, and for them to only understand, oh, these poor Palestinians, yes, they are without water, they are without dirty water, they are without food. But the Americans, and especially the Israelis, they're trying to get them to safety. They're putting in resources so they have food. They're trying to get them down south. So when the attack happens, there's a lot less involved in the attack. Hamas, their government is not letting them go, shooting them when they're trying to leave and using them as human shields.
Right.
I mean, Israelis and Americans, we look at the world the same. We protect civilian lives, but a threat has to be dealt with, or they're going to die of 1,000 cuts, 1,000 lethal cuts. That threat has to be eliminated. And unfortunately, because they don't have any value in human life, Hamas is putting all these people, they're putting their command and control structures underneath hospitals and all the schools and places like that. So they are putting their people at harm. We're trying to protect their people at the same time, trying to eliminate the threat. It's the biggest challenge I've ever heard of.
You're basically expanding on the point that I brought up with regards to similarities in gravitational force. We have allowed people to come in from these organizations and other countries who hate us. They hate our guts, and they're not compatible with our values and belief systems. And Donald Trump said something at one point in time. He said, you can only import so many people from third world shitholes before you become a third world shithole yourself. And I know we're running short on time here, but I'll give you another anecdotal example. So when I was with Sun Microsystems, I flew into Detroit and I was going to the Ford campus. And this is the early days of GPSs, early 2000s. And this GPS kept sending me in circles. I was trying to get to this Ritz-Carlton, and I ended up in this parking lot for the shopping mall. And there was a cop car in every single lane of this mall. So I rolled up to one of them, and I had a rental car. But I said to the cop, I said, I'm looking for the Ritz-Carlton. This GPS is running me in circles. Could you get me pointed in the right direction? He said, follow me, son. So we were only maybe half a mile away. It's just that the GPS wasn't doing a good job. And we got there, and he said, where are you from? And I told him, and he said, don't go over there. White people don't go in that part of this area. And it was all Muslims at that particular point in time. And I just read an intelligence piece, open source intelligence piece, that basically said Dearborn, Michigan, which is where the Ford campus is pretty much ground zero for terrorism in the country, people that we've let in and that we've brought here. And it may not be politically correct. I said it earlier, I'll say it again. If it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And the thing that really rubs me the wrong way with our security is TSA agents shaking down my 79-year-old mother at the airport, but not touching any other people of interest, because God forbid that you look at the profile of what the actual bad guy is. And I'm not saying that it's got anything to do with skin color. There's bad white people as well. Most of us who are paying attention do a pretty good job of sizing up the threat. Anyway, I digress. Although unfortunately, I think the Dearborn situation, Minneapolis situation, and some parts of the Midwest where there's large encampments of foreigners who absolutely hate our guts is going to come into play at some time in the very near future. And that's why it's so important to be situationally aware.
And they don't allow police in their neighborhoods now. If in profiling, bring it back to the animal kingdom. If a rabbit didn't profile what's around it and it sees a snake, it's dead. You have to understand, using your gut, what can happen. And profiling is not a bad thing. If someone says, okay, do you profile people? I said, yes. Ask me what I think about the Kiwis. I'll tell you what I think about the people from New Zealand. They are hardcore. They're hard workers. They're very adventurous. That's my profiling of them. Not all of them are like that, but you ask me what I think of people from Alaska or Germany. Hard working, industrious. That's profiling. It's based off of what I know about them. I also profile potential threats. They're not all bad, but if I see a large Muslim community and there's a lot of hatred toward the infidels, us, that's a threat.
So you brought up an interesting point, and we'll end on this. There is I'm not going to disclose location because I don't want to get my source in trouble, but there's essentially a terrorist training facility in a Midwestern state where there are constant reports of full automatic gunfire, explosions, and it's in a liberal district, and the judges and the courts will not give the cops search warrants and the ability to surveil this property. And when they go to this property, the group of individuals from a foreign country who, again, hate our guts, will not let the cops in. They won't talk to them. They won't tell them anything. We have intelligence at the next level up. So the federal level, that installation is actively training people in acts of terrorism. But we're stepping on our own feet because God forbid that somebody who has the profile of a terrorist, we don't want to offend them, or we don't want to offend anybody's sensibilities. And that's complete and utter bullshit.
Woke liberal mindsets, biggest threat we have right now.
Yeah, let me just mention this. We take current news events and we put suggestions in front of our audience on how they can better prepare themselves based on whatever's at the top of the news cycle. And then we poll them of all the things that have been suggested. What would you like more coverage on? And consistently, one of the top things is what we're discussing today, situational awareness. I will say this week, as far as Monday to Friday is concerned, 4 out of 5 videos are on situational awareness with people like yourself who have their own set of unique experiences and skills to weigh in on this topic. I'm guessing that this video will probably air on Friday. The other 3 videos will air in advance. So you're probably batting cleanup on this, Don. But what I'm going to do is we'll take your points and the other topics we've discussed, and we'll put them down in the description, 15, 20 things that you can do to improve your situational awareness. And then we'll run a poll probably next week on the suggestions that were made and get a little bit more fine grained for our audience. Can't thank you enough for being here, Don. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap it up?
It's always a pleasure, Chris, to talk with you. And I really appreciate what you're doing for your viewers and bringing all of this out and discussing it like you do. I think you're helping out so many people. I appreciate it.
We appreciate you, Don. We couldn't do it without guys like you. SEAL Team 6, 1 and 2 as well, everything else at the top of the food chain when it comes to this sort of stuff. So thanks again, Don. I know you're traveling over the next couple of days.
Yeah,
be safe.
Okay.
Be safe and maintain high level of situational awareness. Okay.
Thanks, Chris. You be safe too.
Thanks, Don.
I'm a Survival Dispatch Insider. We bring together survival enthusiasts and preppers to share knowledge and skills, which means you can enhance your preparedness for emergencies and ensure the safety of your community. The results you'll get: improve your emergency preparedness by learning skills and strategies from experienced preppers. Build lasting connections with like-minded individuals to share your passion for safety and readiness. Access a wealth of knowledge and resources to assist you in protecting you and your community in certain situations. Go to survivaldispatch.com to get started.